Before we begin, if you value deep historical analysis, overlooked wartime knowledge, and lessons that still matter today, subscribe to After the Sirens right now and leave a comment telling us which period of history you want uncovered next. This channel exists for people who don't just watch history but study it, apply it, and preserve it. When World War II reshaped the global food system, governments didn't turn to superfoods, supplements, or imported luxuries. They turned to vegetables that could survive bombing raids, nutrient shortages, and months of storage. These vegetables kept entire populations alive under rationing, malnutrition, and constant uncertainty. Today, as modern health trends chase novelty, those same vegetables are quietly re-emerging in nutrition science, survival planning, and sustainable agriculture. What was once wartime necessity is becoming modern wisdom, and understanding why requires looking beyond calories into resilience itself. Why wartime food systems prioritized survival over taste or trends. During World War II, food policy was a matter of national security. Britain's Ministry of Food, Germany's Agricultural Command, and United States wartime planners all understood one thing clearly. Crops had to grow fast, store well, and deliver maximum nutrition with minimal resources. This eliminated fragile produce and elevated vegetables that modern diets later dismissed as boring or poor man's food. Kale, rutabaga, beets, turnips, and cabbage weren't chosen accidentally. They were chosen because they could thrive in poor soil, resist cold, and remain edible long after harvest. These vegetables also had another advantage. They provided micronutrients that prevented deficiency diseases without relying on meat or dairy, which were heavily rationed. Vitamin C, iron, folate, potassium, and fiber became strategic assets rather than dietary preferences. Governments printed pamphlets explaining how to cook and preserve these vegetables because survival depended on them. So, here's how kale quietly became one of the most important vegetables of the war. Long before kale was rebranded as a modern superfood, it was actually a cornerstone of wartime nutrition, especially in Britain and Northern Europe. You see, kale grows through frost, resists pests, and can be harvested repeatedly from the same plant. During bombing campaigns that disrupted supply chains, kale just kept growing in backyard plots, allotments, and those dig-for-victory gardens. Nutritionally, kale delivered vitamin C during winters when citrus imports, well, they just vanished. This prevented scurvy among civilians without access to fruit. For modern viewers, the lesson is clear. Kale is not just healthy, it is reliable. A survivalist today can grow kale in poor soil, harvest leaves weekly, and maintain year-round nutrition with minimal inputs. During the Second World War, that reliability really meant the difference between deficiency and stability. Now let's talk about why rutabagas became the backbone of civilian survival in Europe. Rutabagas, often mocked today, were actually one of the most calorically dense vegetables available during wartime Europe. In Germany, rutabagas replaced bread and potatoes during shortages so severe they became known as turnip winters. While unpopular, they provided carbohydrates, fiber, and trace minerals when little else was available. What modern health discussions often overlook, honestly, is rutabagas' impressive storage ability. When properly stored, rutabagas can last for months without the need for refrigeration. They can be boiled, mashed, fermented, or even dried, offering quite a bit of versatility. A modern application of this knowledge, is in food security planning. Just a small harvest of rutabagas can actually support a household through the winter, especially when fresh produce is just unavailable. And this isn't just theory, it's historically proven. Now, let's talk about how beets functioned as both medicine and morale boosters. During the Second World War, beets were heavily promoted because they grew quickly and provided iron and nitrates that supported circulation and endurance. British wartime cookbooks, in fact, pushed beet salads, beet soups, and even beet-based desserts to help maintain civilian health during meat shortages. Modern science has, validated what wartime nutritionists already observed. Beets improve blood flow and physical stamina. For civilians working those long factory shifts or soldiers training under rationed diets, this really mattered. Interestingly, today, athletes pay premium prices for beet supplements, often unaware that wartime families grew the same benefits right in their gardens. A practical modern use, honestly, is incorporating beets into long-term food storage through pickling, which was actually standard practice during the war. Why, you might wonder, was cabbage considered a strategic vegetable rather than just a humble side dish? Well, cabbage earned its status because it could be fermented into sauerkraut, which preserved vitamin C for months on end. This made it absolutely invaluable to both civilian populations and military forces during the war. German and Eastern European households, in particular, relied on fermented cabbage to survive those harsh winters without any fresh produce. From a survival perspective, fermentation is fascinating because it requires no electricity, no refrigeration, or really any advanced tools. Households during the Second World War understood this kind of microbial preservation almost intuitively. And, modern viewers can actually apply this today by fermenting cabbage at home to create shelf-stable nutrition. This is not just a culinary trend, it is, in fact, an ancient preservation method, refined and perfected under the pressures of wartime necessity. Now let's talk about how turnips and parsnips stepped in to fill nutritional gaps left by strict rationing. Turnips and parsnips often replaced potatoes when harvests failed or supply lines completely collapsed. These root vegetables provided much-needed carbohydrates while also delivering fiber and minerals that were sorely absent in the refined bread of wartime. Governments, despite some public resistance, encouraged their use because, quite simply, they helped sustain energy levels when it mattered most. So, the lesson for today is really adaptability. Wartime diets succeeded, you see, because they accepted substitution rather than chasing perfection. In a modern context, this means designing diets and food systems that do not, rely on just a narrow range of crops. Diversity equals resilience. Now, why are these vegetables returning as a modern health trend? Well, climate instability, supply chain disruptions, and soil depletion are forcing agriculture to reconsider hardy crops. Nutrition science is honestly rediscovering fiber-rich, micronutrient-dense vegetables that help regulate blood sugar and gut health. Biostro vegetables fit this need perfectly. Unlike fragile modern produce, these crops actually thrive under stress. That is why they sustained nations under bombardment and blockade. Their return, frankly, is not nostalgic. It is practical. So, how can modern viewers actually apply these World War II food strategies today? Well, for instance, a home gardener might prioritize frost-resistant greens like kale and cabbage to, extend the growing season. And a preparedness-minded household could store rutabagas and beets without any refrigeration at all. Fermentation, as well, can replace dependence on electricity. These steps really mirror wartime strategies rather than just following trends. Understanding World War II food systems also changes how we interpret history. Survival was not accidental. It was engineered through agricultural choices, public education, and cultural adaptation. Why remembering wartime vegetables matters beyond nutrition. These vegetables tell a larger story about resilience under pressure. They remind us that progress is not always forward-looking. Sometimes it's actually a return to what worked when everything else failed. World War II populations survived because they adapted diets to reality rather than desire. That lesson is timeless. If this analysis added value to your understanding of wartime survival and forgotten history, subscribe to After the Sirens, share this video with someone who takes history seriously, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Your engagement helps keep deep historical content alive where it belongs.